and thank you, Shalon, for inviting me to introduce the conference to our guests. And it's a great pleasure for me to be here just for a few minutes to introduce the conference and welcome you to virtual Oxford. Some of you are in Oxford, I know, but you're only virtually with us because of the difficult conditions we're working and living under. And we have a number of very distinguished speakers, and a very warm welcome to you, Mr. Cheng, and thank you for giving us the keynote. I'll just say a few words, I think, about the shape of things that might help set the scene a little bit for what I think is a very exciting agenda today, and with some wonderful speakers and some ideas that are really bursting to be shared and discussed. And, this is a very timely conference and intervention. We're focusing on inclusive digital models and their use and their platforms, particularly in low-income countries. And the world is really needing ideas on how we can develop and help people. And the ideas are good, and we can't work without them, but we also need practice, and we need to put ideas into practice very quickly. We live in now what we probably all call the post-COVID world. We know what it's like. We know a little bit how to behave and work. And we know that digital, in many regards, is our friend. And the first thing I want to say is that the very obvious thing to say is that the coronavirus has accelerated everybody's appreciation of having access to digital technologies. We wouldn't be able to hold this without the wonderful platform that Zoom is, and it's not the only wonderful platform that we can work together on. Now, one thing you surely know is that this platform and others weren't just suddenly developed and installed overnight. The heritage of Zoom, I think, is 2011, if I'm not wrong. And companies like Tencent, that Mr. Cheng represents, have been working and investing very heavily in research and development in making technologies that allow us to connect and work together for many years. And we're now, thankfully, reaping the benefit of that. And what's extraordinary is the accelerated installation phase that we've appreciated in the last 10 months. And I think we should bear that in mind. And of course, when we accelerate installation that quickly, sometimes there are some perverse side effects. So I hope that you will also discuss some of the downsides. Like you, I found myself locked to the screen for many hours a day. And, I'm fit and healthy, but I'm suffering as well from the rigidities of sitting still all day and not seeing my friends face to face and colleagues to work with face to face. So I hope there will be time in this conference to also appreciate that, there are some consequences here that we need to think about. I just want to flag a couple of things from an Oxford perspective, because you surely know, if you're not at Oxford, that Oxford has been at centre stage in the fight against this dreadful pandemic. And indeed, it's the standout university. I'm very proud to be able to say that not only have we delivered one of the major vaccines for the world, we've also worked on so many other parts of this pandemic in other countries. And I just want to touch on some of those, because they also relate to the agenda of this conference, which is about being digital. And one of the things that underpins this is that the digital infrastructure that we enjoy as scientists, as researchers, as social scientists, is now a universal scientific infrastructure that allows us to collect data, analyze that data, and make new interpretations and insights very quickly. And it's a privilege, actually, to be in a research community when there is such an abundance of access to data and the tools to analyze and interpret and even make predictions from that data. And that's the world we've stepped into with machine learning and AI. And I think that without that, we would be in a very, very difficult place today. So at Oxford, we lead in a number of areas. One is the development of epidemic research tools. And we are conducting studies at the moment in 42 countries, in 566 sites, where we are scraping data on the emergence of new acute respiratory infections. We have a threat detection and characterization research team working on what's called the Vietnam Initiative on zoonotic infections. And as many of you know, that there are deep connections to animal welfare and our food supply chains. And we have cutting edge genomic analysis, again, absolutely dependent on our ability to handle and manage data. We have some wonderful diagnostics work going on in Kenya, Indonesia, Asia, Nepal. Robotic work where we're automating the capture of samples and their measurement and the data that comes from them. Things like digital contact and tracing, almost passé for me to say. It hasn't been implemented very well. Oxford is in the center of some of the developments on that. And then when I think about clinical trials, you don't do clinical trials these days without having good data protocols. And, you know, we were privileged, I think, at Oxford to have those. And when we did the randomized recovery trials, we found that dexamethasone is a very good treatment for those seriously ill with COVID. And it was a breakthrough moment. We wouldn't have found that if we didn't have the data and the platforms to work off, and then the access to people. And indeed, those recovery trials, talking about low-income countries, were carried out in Vietnam, Nepal, and Indonesia at the same time as they were being delivered in the UK by our academics. And the final two things I'll say in the medical area, immunology. We have a COVID multi-omics blood atlas. We need data on what this dreadful disease is doing. And it's no good just having data from Oxford or London. And, you know, the nature of our academic endeavor is to collaborate. We have deep collaborations with our colleagues in China. And we're trying to understand in the immunology side and be predictive, indeed, about how severe COVID is in the longer term. And we can't do that without population studies and access to data, not just about the medical data, but the behavioral data as to how people feel, how they're working, how they're living. So there is a plethora of work going on and many of these studies led by Oxford or collaboratively with Oxford and with colleagues around the world, many of them from places and universities in our conference today. And this is indeed a global collaborative scientific endeavor fueled by the access to data platforms. And so I have to leave the question dangling in the air. How can we do more to help low-income countries participate fully in these areas? And there is some good news, of course, and I'm sure you'll hark back pre-pandemic, I think probably pre-financial crisis, to development innovations like M-Pesa in Kenya in the payments platforms, which leapfrogged banking technologies to allow local people to assemble their businesses using low-cost mobile phones. And there are some great examples that you'll know better than I do in India, indeed in China, in Africa, and in South America, where business models have been transformed and given access and hope to people to develop their economies because of the harnessing of new digital technologies in low-cost environments. Now, I'll end and then hand back to you, Charles and Diego, by saying, what is the role of academics in this? And many of the people here, many of us are academics, very serious endeavors here to do our work properly and study these phenomena. But these days, studying this sort of phenomena isn't good enough on its own. We need to be more entrepreneurial about how we make connections with the results of this work into practice. And it's why I'm so happy to see that on the platform today, we have both policymakers and business people. You know, this is the triple helix that we've learned works. And indeed, the scientific community is just about as collaborative as it gets in any community. And that's fantastic. We need to work with as much collaboration with the policy community. And we also need to work with as much collaboration with other institutions and agencies, and indeed with businesses, and with great businesses like our friends from Tencent. And so I hope that for those of us who have you know, our academic studies in our bloodstream, that we will also develop the skill sets to collaborate and discuss our results and help others whose role it is to put our ideas into practice to make the world a better place. We really need to give hope to people at this time. We need to be able to show that our work can make a difference. And we have a duty to do that. Look, we in our community are in a far better place than many people who are suffering from this dreadful pandemic. And we have the insights, and we need to get those out of our labs and into practice to help people. And that's our duty here. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for participating. And I'd particularly like to thank once again, Charles for organising us. It's a tremendous opportunity, and our distinguished guests and speakers for attending this, this conference. And with that, I will declare the conference open. Thank you.